Amazing day, my dear STEM Legend learners. Welcome to another episode for Quarter 1 here in Senior High Tech City. I am glad you are here to join me in learning today. I am Teacher Ernest, and together, let us discover life in the exciting world of biology. If you are ready to learn, please behave, listen, and take note of the important concepts of our lesson for today. It's trivia time! Who discovered the cell membrane? Although the discovery of cell membranes is thought to be in parallel with the discovery of microscopes, this is not exactly true. In the early 1660s, Robert Hooke made his first observation using a light microscope. In 1665, he examined a piece of fungus under a light microscope and he called each space as a cellula. Are you excited for another amazing biological science adventure? Let's begin! Before we start, let's have an activity called Word Pace. Here are the mechanics of the activity. I will show you a picture, write any words or terms associated with the picture being presented. You are given 25 seconds to key in your answer in the chat box below. Are you ready? Let's go! Further, so stay focused and don't go away. Our lesson for today is structural components of the cell membrane. And for the learning competency, the learner describes the structural components of the cell membrane. At the end of the lesson, you are expected to define cell membrane and describe the structural components of the cell membrane. The cell is the most basic unit of life on Earth, and the development of the cell membrane or plasma membrane may be one of the most important parts of the story of the evolution of life. Both prokaryotes or single-celled organisms that lack a distinct nucleus and other organelles, and eukaryotes, a single-cell or multicellular organisms whose cells have a distinct nucleus and various organelles, have cell membranes that helps the cell remain separate, in a sense, from the outside world. The cell membrane is the barrier by which a cell's insides are kept in and the environment is kept out. It also performs several other functions to maintain the cell's homeostasis, that is, the cell state of equilibrium or stability as conditions change within the cell or in the outside environment. Let me show you the structure of the cell membrane. Also known as the plasma membrane, is a double layer of lipids and proteins that surrounds a cell and separates the cytoplasm, which is the contents of the cell, from its surrounding environment. It is selectively permeable, which means that it only lets certain molecules enter and exit. It can also control the amount of some substances that go into or out of the cell. All cells a cell membrane. These membranes are composed primarily of phospholipids and proteins and are typically described as phospholipid bilayers. The cell membrane has a fluid consistency due to being made up of large part of phospholipids, and because of this, proteins move freely across its surface. The multitude of different proteins and lipids in the cell membrane give it the look of a mosaic. Phospholipids are the main component of the cell membrane. These are lipid molecules made up of polar phosphate group head and two nonpolar fatty acid tails. The polar phosphate group head is hydrophilic, which means water-loving or attractive, while nonpolar fatty acid tails are hydrophobic, which means water-hating or it repels. The phospholipid bilayer also serve as binding sites for other substances such as the proteins. The cell membrane lipids. Number 1 is the phospholipids. Phospholipids are the major component of the cell membrane, or it is a lipid bilayer, which means it is a semi-permeable, allowing certain molecules to diffuse across the cell membrane. It is amphipathic because it has both the hydrophilic and hydrophobic parts. Number 2 is cholesterol. Cholesterol helps keep the cell membranes from being stiff by preventing phospholipids from being too closely packed together. Cholesterol is not found in the membranes of the plant cell. Number 3 is glycolipids. Glycolipids are located on the cell membrane surfaces and have carbohydrate sugar chain attached to them. They help to recognize other cells of the body. The cell membrane also contains many different proteins. Many of these proteins are transmembrane proteins, which are embedded in the membrane but stick out on both sides. Some of these proteins are receptors, which bind to signal molecules, while others are ion channels, which are the only means of allowing ions into or out of the cell. Furthermore, the cell membrane allows the cell to interact with its environment and communicate with other cells. The cell membrane proteins. Number 1 is structural protein. It helps to give the cell support and shape. Number 2 is receptor proteins. It helps the cells communicate with their external environment through the use of hormones and other signaling molecules. Number 3 is glycoproteins. It helps in the cell to communicate and molecule transport across the membrane. And number 4 is the transport proteins. It helps in transporting molecules across cell membranes through facilitated diffusion. Now, we have already discovered the structural components of the cell membrane. If you really understood our lesson, let us check your knowledge by answering this multiple choice activity. Choose the correct answer for each question. Bring out your pen and quiz notebook and let's begin. Are you ready? Let's start!
Number 1. Why cell membrane is also called a fluid mosaic model? Letter A. Various proteins are attached to it. Letter B. Because its molecules are constantly moving. Letter C. Allowing only selected molecules to diffuse across the membrane. And letter D. Separates the contents of the cell from its outside environment, and it regulates what enters and exits the cell. The correct answer is letter B, because its molecules are constantly moving. Number 2. What is the main role of lipids in the cell membrane? Letter A. Helps to give the cell support and shape. Letter B. Helps to give membranes their flexibility. Letter C. Helps cell communicate with their external environment. And letter D. Help in the cell-to-cell communications and molecule transport across the membrane. The correct answer is letter B. Helps to give membranes their flexibility. Number 3. Which of the following cell lipids helps keep cell membranes to become stiff? Letter A. Cholesterol. Letter B. Fatty acid. Letter C. Glycerol. And letter D. Glycolipids. The correct answer is letter A. Cholesterol. Number 4. Which of the following cell lipids helps the cell to recognize other cells of the body? Letter A. Cholesterol. Letter B. Glycolipids. Letter C. Steroids. And letter D. Triglyceride. The correct answer is letter B. Glycolipids. And number 5. Which of the following cell proteins helps in the cell-to-cell communications and molecule transport across membrane? Letter A. Glycoproteins. Letter B. Receptor proteins. Letter C. Structural proteins. And letter D. Transport proteins. The correct answer is letter A. Glycoproteins.
To sum up, cell membrane separates the content of the cell from their external environment. It allows the materials from surrounding to enter and exit the cell. It also allows the materials from the cell to exit outside. Congratulations, my dear Studying learners! I hope that you learned a lot today. Once again, I am your energetic teacher saying, eagerness to learn will lead you in the fulfillment of your dreams. See you in the next episode. Bye.